Hello, everybody. Welcome into the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. So happy to be back with y'all here today on a beautiful, if not hot, outside, at least here in Virginia, June 18th. I do have some bad news to bring to you before the end, before we really get into our show here, a championship potential show here. We are coming to the end of our journey. We're coming to the end of our show. Monday will be our last show here. I will still be doing other things. You can find me all across the internet. We'll be re-upping the Triple Threat show, which is a show that I used to do back when I was at college with the radio. So we'll be back there if you still want to see the same kind of sports coverage every single day. But aside from that, the GSMC Sports Show podcast must go on. There is plenty to talk about here around the world of sports. We're going to start off by previewing a potential closeout game, Game 6 of the NBA Finals here as the road team now. The Thunder have a chance to make it out in 6 games after a dominant Game 5. We have a champion crowned on the ice. The Panthers, the Florida Panthers, have been named Stanley Cup champions for the second year in a row, this time defeating the Oilers in 6 games. Sam Bennett, named the Conn Smythe Trophy recipient, led the NHL in goals in the playoffs at 15. He had a crazy series there. Could have gone to a guy in Brad Marchand as well, but we'll get into that. We'll talk about the College World Series. The Final Four is set, actually now down to the Final 3 with the Coastal Carolina victory over Louisville today. We'll talk about that and much more. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, June 18th. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show here talking all about the NBA Finals. The NBA Finals are here with our first closeout game, which has been such a back and forth series, at least until these last 2 games. We see the Thunder now take a 3-2 series lead. Now, teams in this situation in NBA's Finals history have won 74% of the time. Teams in this situation, like the Thunder are in, have won 80% of the time with a 3-2 lead, 74% of the time, like I said, after taking a 3-2 lead from a 2-2 series. This is going to be a really huge game. Of course, the story from last night, from the last game that they played, was the dichotomy between the play of the stars. You had on the Thunder side your top 2 guys in J-Dub, who went for 40, by the way. He's been incredible all playoffs long, especially in this series. His scoring output has increased every single game, up to 40 points in a huge game to help take control of the series back from Indiana. After the Thunder were really scuffling, they'd given up home court advantage. Now they have it back. They go back to Indiana, but it wasn't like Shea did nothing. SGA added 31 points of his own in Game 5. They combined for 71 total points en route to an 11-point victory over the Pacers. The dichotomy comes on the other side with the Pacers star in Tyrese Halliburton, who finished with 4 points. 0 for 6 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3 turnovers overall. He had a bad night. And I know people are going to bring up that injury. It's a really tough and delicate process. The politics of it are going to be not good for Tyrese Halliburton. either way, but you have to look at the way that Game 5 played out to take a look at what Game 6 is going to look like. We know the bench really stepped up for the Thunder in that game, right? You had Aaron Wiggins, who hit 4 threes, starting off 3 for 3. You had a couple of huge shots from Case and Wallace. The defense was stepping up for them. Chet, especially on the defensive end, I was super impressed by. Even when they were getting past that really good perimeter defense, the Pacers had a lot of trouble on the inside because Chet was such a net front presence down there. He was amazing defensively. He also got his own offensively, but defensively, I was so impressed with him. Pacers turn the ball over too often in that game. They take 23 turnovers. You can't have that happen. But Tyrese Halliburton, 0 field goals, 4 points, all off of free throw attempts. TJ McConnell led them back into it. It looked like the Pacers were going to have a second life. TJ McConnell leads them back from down 18 to just a 2-point game in the fourth quarter. Tyrese Halliburton comes in, and it doesn't go well. Again, the story is, and he is injured. He's got a right calf strain, which is tough to play through, no doubt about it, especially with such a physically demanding style of play when they have to go up against a Thunder defense that is just elite, electric in just about every single sense of the word there. You go out with Tyrese Halliburton not 100%, and you see how bad that is for that Pacers team. Pascal Siakam quietly had his best game of the playoffs, or at least of this series, 28, 6, and 5 in Game 5, but it didn't matter because Halliburton, who they rely on to be that aggressive scorer, that downhill guy that pushes the pace, it's hard to push the pace when your leg is hurting you every time you run. And that is where the bread and butter of the Pacers is. If they can't push the pace, this series is over. There's going to be a heavy hand relying on a guy like TJ McConnell again. We saw how well that offense was running when he stepped into that primary role. Now, you can sit here and say, and I can sit here from my cozy chair without knowing the true severity of that right calf strain that they were getting an MRI done on. He's going to play. Tyrese Halliburton, there is not a shot in the world that Tyrese Halliburton sits out for Game 6 or a potential Game 7 if they're able to force that. But the question has to be raised in a game that is the most important of their franchise. Well, I'll just go out and say that. The most important game in Pacers franchise history, at least in the last decade, at least in the last 25 years since they were last in the finals. This is a huge game for them. Is it better to not have Tyrese Halliburton out there? And I know that's kind of a crazy thing to say with the pedestal that we have put Tyrese on in this playoff run, a guy that's arguably a top 10 player in the league. The way that he's able to control that offense, a lot of it has to do with his ability to just understand how this team works. He's able to push the pace again, which is why the Pacers were so good throughout these playoffs. But with Tyrese Halliburton with that leg injury, you can see the difference. Just go back to that third quarter when TJ McConnell comes into the game. There's a palpable difference with how that team plays. TJ McConnell is able to get downhill, and even though all of his shots aren't falling, he was making a lot of them, but not all of them were falling. They were able to cut the lead down to 2. They were able to be aggressive on the defensive side of the ball, but you can't have McConnell and Tyrese Halliburton out there at the same time. They clash with each other, and they also just are too much of a liability on defense to have on the floor together. There's going to be some really tough decisions for Rick Carlisle to make in this game, and the first one is going to be how much do you rely on your best player versus how much is that injury hampering him. It wasn't necessarily a bad decision to put Tyrese Halliburton out there for the last stretch of games because he's been magical. He has that demon inside of him, that clutch time, that moment gene inside of him that makes him step up, or has all playoffs long, and he's been incredibly clutch, but he just didn't have the juice in Game 5. Now, it has been a couple days. It's been a couple days since Game 5. They get that 2-day rest. They're back at home. The home energy should help, and I think he'll play a lot better. So he's going to go out there and give it his best shot. But if it looks like it did in Game 5 for Tyrese Halliburton, if that's truly is how it looks, there needs to be a strong consideration from Rick Carlisle to think about moving off of Tyrese Halliburton for the rest of the game, or at least in those clutch time moments. Halliburton is a great player. This should not take away from his legacy, but there's not a right way to handle it. If he sits out, people are going to say, oh, you're soft. You're not playing through the most important game of your career through an injury. Do you even care about winning? If he goes out and he plays, people are going to say, and we saw in Game 5, if you're out there, you have to be better. There is no winning for Tyrese Halliburton unless he goes and plays like he can when he's healthy. He's been dealing with this injury since game 2, or at least a similar injury since game 2. He re-aggravated or made it worse in that game 5. They can't have that happen again. They also need their bench to step up a little bit more. I know their bench played good. We talked about TJ McConnell, but he is an excellent piece to have. You need their guys to start shooting the ball a lot better. This game is they're going to have, if the Pacers want to stay alive in this series, they're going to need to rely a lot more on Pascal Siakam to help run that offense. With TJ McConnell to come off the bench and push that pace, they're going to need more energy defensively, and they're going to need to figure out how to slow down J-Dub. There is an interesting point for who should win Finals MVP. It's going to go to Shea. I will say that with my chest right now. Shea deserves it, but there is a conversation around J-Dub. If J-Dub, once again, is that main offensive weapon, if he drops another 40 bomb in a closeout game, you can make the argument. He's averaging 31 points per game in these playoffs, and while Shea has been the offensive engine for them, they won Game 4 solely because of what Shea did in the fourth quarter. They win Game 5 solely because of J-Dub, and those are two of the biggest wins that they have had in the history of their franchise. There is a real chance, a real argument to be made for J-Dub to win Finals MVP. Is it enough if the series ended today over Shea? Absolutely not. But this is a Thunder team that is looking to now win 3 in a row, something that has not happened to the Pacers since January. It has been a very long time since they lost 3 games in a row. It had been since March since they lost 2 games in a row. They go back home looking to extend the series to 7 games on Sunday. It is going to be quite the battle. I am on the Thunder side of this. It feels like at the end of Game 5, with the way that Shea was playing, with the way that everything just kind of clicked for them in that fourth quarter, it felt like that was it for the Pacers, at least for me. Go along with that J-Dub 40 bomb. That feels like it's it. Now the Pacers, you never say die around that team, right? Never say die when you're talking about the Indiana Pacers, but it is absolutely back to the wall, feral animal style game. You need production from all over. You need Miles Turner to step up, especially with an injured Tyrese Halliburton. He struggled offensively. He's been fine defensively, but you need him to step up offensively. Obi Toppin needs to have one of those games. You need TJ McConnell to step up if Tyrese isn't really able to be 100% and step into that starting-ish role, even though he's not going to start. It is going to be a very tough game. The key things I'm looking for on each side. We're starting with the Pacers, key to the game. Obviously, we've talked about it a bunch. What is going on with Tyrese Halliburton? That is question number 1. If we get game 1, 2, 3 Tyrese Halliburton, a healthy Tyrese Halliburton that steps up and plays aggressive, this game is going to be a lot easier for the Pacers, and I kind of favor them in that case. If you get Tyrese Halliburton of game 5, you get a timid Tyrese Halliburton that is passing, that is making mistakes, that is not hitting his shots from the field, this game is over immediately. That is key number 1. Tyrese needs to step up. Key number 2 for the Pacers is going to come on that switching of Carlisle, right? If Carlisle notices that, again, Tyrese Halliburton isn't the best, he needs to be prepared to bench him. That is not an easy decision, and if he benches him and they end up losing, that is the kind of decision that you can get fired over. Now, we need to understand here, it is not an easy decision to make, to take out your best player, a player that has gotten you to Game 6 of the NBA Finals. But sometimes as a coach, you just need to look your guys in the eye and say, hey, you're not at your best right now. We're throwing in McConnell. The third key for the Pacers, get the bench going. They've done an excellent job of that the last couple of games. Nesmith needs to start hitting his shots. He is a guy that can be a microwave like nobody else on that team. Mathurin stepped up big, but his defense makes it hard for him to stay on the floor in those clutch minutes. If you can have a Nesmith game, if you can get a game where you have Nembhard making his threes as well, it's going to be a lot easier for this team, both offensively and defensively, to run their offense. Now, on the Thunder side of things, what are their key factors as they look to close out an NBA Finals? Very simply, don't let Shea get tired. right? That's step number one. The way that Mark Dagnall has been able to do his minutes, his substitutions, give J-Dub the ball a lot more early on in the game has not only helped unlock a lot of what J-Dub is able to do, getting to his spots, making his tough mid-range shots, but it's saved a lot of energy of Shea down the stretch. It's allowed him to go out and play a lot better defense, as we've seen him go out, really affect things on the defensive end more than he had when we're talking about a setting where he is the only offense. He's the MVP for a reason, but people forget what he can do on the defensive end. He's no slouch when it comes to perimeter defense. He's one of the best in the league. That's why he fits so well on this Thunder team with so many of the rest of them. The other key, again, it's going to be the bench. The bench needs to step up for them, whether that be Cason Wallace, whether that be Aaron Wiggins, whether it be Isaiah Joe, or whoever else off the bench comes up and steps up huge. They need to do that. That is how the Thunder close this game out. And the last piece of the puzzle for the Thunder is just going to be J-Dub. We saw what J-Dub did in Game 5, right? 40 points. He's gotten better every single game as far as scoring output goes, but he needs to control those turnovers. If he is going to be the guy that brings the ball up more, there's going to be pressure, and we saw in that run, if you get enough pressure on a guy like J-Dub, he is not necessarily the cleanest with the ball. He can get a little bit sloppy bringing the ball up. That is what you need to do if you're the Thunder. Protect the ball. Win the turnover battle. Get Shea enough energy so that he can be your closer in the fourth quarter, and get somebody on the bench going. Very similar for the Pacers. Make sure that Hallie is going. If Hallie is not going, you need to be able to hit that big red button that says it's McConnell time, it's his team today, and you need big additions from the bench. I'm leaning towards the Thunder in this one. A lot of it has to do with that Halliburton injury. I don't know how much they can do with Halliburton hobbled. We'll have to see how he is come game time. But my official prediction, Thunder in 6 at the beginning of it. It's coming to fruition here. The Thunder, I think, close out the series here on the road in 6 games. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. Let me know in the comments. Who do you guys have winning this series, this game? What do you think scores are going to look like? Who's going to be the finals MVP? I'd love to hear from you guys here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Stanley Cup Finals, one of the most intriguing finals we've had in a long time over there, came to an end in 6 games as well last night. It saw the Florida Panthers crowned back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. We'll talk about that, where they stand amongst the greats in history, and much more coming up next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. In this final week of the GSMC Sports Podcast here, of course, you can go find me all over the internet. I will be doing more stuff at the Triple Threat Show come the next few weeks. If you miss me that much, I'd appreciate a follow over there. But if you're just tuning in today, we are taking a look at the finals. We talked about a preview where the Thunder could potentially close out the first ever championship in OKC tonight against the Pacers. The Pacers at home, They've been very good there all playoffs long. The Thunder have just been kind of mid on the road. We'll see if they can close it out tonight. This time, we take a look at a series that ended last night. The Florida Panthers are your 2025 Stanley Cup champions for the second year in a row. The Florida Panthers have defeated the Edmonton Oilers at home yet again. We'll talk about that, how that game went, how that series went as a whole, and what's next for both of these teams. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, June 18th. But like I was saying, we are going to get here into everything you need to know about what was an incredible Stanley Cup championship round. The Florida Panthers, your back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. They've now won 2 in a row and 2 in their history. They've been to 3 in a row now after losing the one just a couple of years ago. They look like they could potentially be back again. Besides the point there, the Conn Smythe Trophy for the MVP of the playoffs went to Sam Bennett. He led the NHL in postseason goals with 15. There was a bit of a contest between him and Brad Marchand, the pickup from Boston, who helped bring the championship down to Florida for a second year in a row. They wouldn't have won it without Brad Marchand, and I think there's a real case to be made that he deserves to be that Conn Smythe winner. But Sam Bennett was amazing as well. We can't talk about how this series ended without talking about one Reinhard, though. He had not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4 goals in a closeout game that they won 5-1 to win the Stanley Cup. How about Sam Reinhard? He had been a clutch goal scorer all series long. You talk about the game that got sent to overtime after the Oilers' crazy comeback. That was Reinhard. He had a goal in a lot of the games that helped bring them to the point, propel them to this point. He deserves so much love. Tkachuk with the other goal, but the story of this for the Oilers on the other side is goaltender issues. It was the story of their playoff run last year, right? Connor McDavid did everything that he could. He only scored 1 goal in this series, but that's because the Panthers defense had a plan. They clogged the middle where he loves to work. They pushed their guys to the outside, and even though the stick handling on Connor McDavid is one of the best I've ever seen in my entire life, his ability to weave in and out of defenses past and through would-be defenders that are trying to knock you on your back every time you get within range, he is one of those guys that can still find a way around any kind of traffic jam you put there for him. But they did an excellent job slowing down one of the best hockey players in the history of this game, right? They went out there and Leon Draisaitl still had his thing, right? He won a couple games for them, and they kept this close. But the story for the Oilers, after falling short now 2 years in a row, they need to fix that goaltending situation. They've rolled with the exact same goaltending duo now back-to-back seasons, Pickard and Stuart Skinner. And Stuart Skinner has the ability to stand on his head. He did it in last year's playoffs, especially in the back half of the Stanley Cup Finals, taking them from a 3-0 series deficit all the way to a Game 7 where they end up losing by just 1 goal. Skinner was playing out of his mind at that one. He had a little bit of a stretch like that in these playoffs, where after a first period where they fall behind a little bit, he locks back in, he gets them a win. You cannot continue to play like this. They had 8 come from behind victories in this Stanley Cup playoffs. That is death, and that is living and dying by fire. And they died by fire right there in Florida. Florida was not afraid of their offense. They had a defense to match with that. They need to desperately this offseason go out and solve that issue, because I know a couple of key injuries hurt them, right? Hyman going down did not help, but that didn't matter. They weren't going to win this series with the way that goaltending was going. You need to have an answer. Sergei Bobrovsky might not have been as elite as he was last year. He wasn't in any kind of Conn Smythe discussion this year like he was last year, but what he does do is he gives you stability. You know he's not going to let any freebies in, and you don't know that with Stuart Skinner. You don't know that with Calvin Pickard. It has been the same story now back-to-back years for the Oilers. It is great that they've made it to the Cup final. It's great that Connor McDavid is getting onto these world stages, that Connor McDavid is getting his chance to potentially scratch his name into Lord Stanley's Cup. But he has become the guy that is always the bridesmaid and never the bride. He has been this close now 2 years in a row. And the way he's playing, he'll get one eventually. But windows don't last forever in the NHL. We don't know how long this Panthers dominance run is going to be, but they've clearly found a way past the Western Conference with that offense. The West and the East, they play very different styles of hockey. In the Western Conference, it's a lot more high-octane offenses. It's a lot more passing, finesse style. On the East, it is your classic, hard-nosed, I'm going to beat you up kind of hockey. You talk about enforcers, they're in the East. You talk about guys that are going to knock your teeth out, they're in the East. And adjusting from a finesse style of play to get out of the West to a hard-nosed, physical, beat 'em up kind of style of the East, you see where that clash comes. You get hit in the face one too many times, regardless of how skilled you are, it is not going to be a good time for you. It just will not work out. And we've seen that now 2 years in a row. When the West sends their best and the East sends their best, the East sends them home battered and bloodied and with absolutely nothing, right? That can change. You have the guys on defense to deal with it. The Oilers, for their credit, they stood up to the beating a little bit. They had those comeback victories. They were dominant in the third period. They were able to hold their own in the huge fistfights that broke out at the end of a couple of games there, getting their momentum back, getting a couple licks in, but they aren't built for that. And when you don't have someone on the back end, a goalie that you can consistently rely on to stop most of the shots, to stop 90% of the shots, which is something that they have really struggled with, the Oilers have, you are not going to get much further than this. They have reached their proverbial glass ceiling. They need to shatter through it. They need to go out and get a guy. You look at what the Kings did. It didn't matter against the Oilers, but Darcy Kemper was a guy that was on the market. I'm not a Darcy Kemper guy, never really was, but they were able to go out and get him, and then he was in the Vezina Trophy conversation. It completely transformed what kind of team they were. They had the goalie that they could rely on. There are going to be guys that you can trade for. There are guys in systems in crowded goalie rooms that you can trade for. The Ducks, maybe you can get them to move off of a guy like John Gibson, but until you get a real answer at goalie, an answer that isn't giving up 3 or 4 goals a game, an answer that isn't sitting in the 800s of save percentages, you are not going to win a cup going up against a much bigger and more physical team than you that will punch you in the throat and will not feel sorry about it. You've seen it now 2 years in a row, and congratulations to the Panthers. We'll get to them in a second, but there are lots of problems with this team building of the Edmonton Oilers, and I hate it because you take a look at the talent on that team. You have Connor McDavid, probably the second best hockey player, maybe third best hockey player to ever play this game, the best in the game right now, right? You look at Leon Draisaitl, one of the best pure goal scorers, a guy who was up for the Hart Trophy this year, and you could have a conversation that maybe he deserved it over a guy like Connor Hellebuck, right? These are the faces of offensive hockey right now. You had Nathan McKinnon to that over there in Colorado. That is offensive trio right there. You have an insane offense, and it has gotten you this far. Invest in the goaltender position. You have to invest in that goaltender position. As far as the Florida Panthers go, they raised the cup for the second straight season. The big story here, the trade, bringing in a guy like Brad Marchand, who can immediately come in. He had 7 goals in that series. He is the first player ever to have 5+ goals on multiple teams in multiple Stanley Cup finals. He is a savior over there, a guy that they would not have won the series without. Now, Sam Bennett, for what he did, again, we talked about it, leading the league in goals in the postseason. was the Conn Smythe winner. They both deserve some kind of consideration over there. But this is the Panthers team that the real question going forward for them is how much longer can they keep this up? We've seen a couple of magical dynastic runs, 3 years specifically, dynastic runs coming out of the East recently. The Penguins in the mid-2010s, right? Their run there, making 3 straight cups. You talk about the Lightning, who just finished up their 3 run. Now it's 6 years ago, but they went to 3 straight. The Florida Panthers, immediately following the Lightning, have now gone to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. The Lightning tired out. They ran into a wall. That is a lot of hockey to play. You play September into June, you don't get a lot of rest, and you're going to start to see injuries from these runs. These guys have played through crazy stuff. People play through broken legs, through broken backs, through fractured stuff all the time in hockey to get here. They just play through that like it's nothing. People miss 2 years because they pushed themselves too far. You talk about Landeskog for the Avalanche. He won his cup. He didn't show up until this playoff run. That is 2 years later, where they finally were able to get their captain back. How much longer can this Panthers team go on? They have the hard-nosed guys, and it doesn't look like they're ready to give up now. But it was the same kind of thing with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They were a lot more led by the play of Andrei Vasilevskiy, who's still one of the elite goaltenders in all of hockey. But when he started to decline, the rest of that team started to decline. You see guys move off, and now they're falling their way back down. They're still a good playoff team, but they're not winning anything anytime soon. How much longer, with the expenses that's going to come from paying your players, can you keep this Florida Panthers squad together? Can they extend it to 4 years? I'm on the side of thinking maybe 1 more year in them. Again, playing hockey until mid-June is so taxing on the body. If there's one sport that I think is the most taxing on the body, it is ice hockey. And I understand if you disagree with that, but my reasoning for that is that it's not the most athletic you have to be. You have to be the most athletic to play basketball, I believe. But it's a different kind of movement overall. You not only have to learn how to run on ice, you have to do it while wearing skates. You have to be able to deal with linebackers running at you and slamming you into the wall, all at the same time while handling just a little puck from a stick. You don't get to touch the puck at all. It is incredibly hard. That thing is flying around at 100 miles an hour towards your face if you're a goaltender. It is such a small area that you have to score on. I think it's the hardest sport to just be elite at. But these guys figure it out. I think the Panthers have a chance to run it back one more time. But for now, enjoy that trophy. Enjoy it. Go spend your time in Florida. It's always fun to track where the cup goes, what it gets up to. Took a dip in the Atlantic last year. We'll see what kind of misadventures the Stanley Cup gets into this year with this Florida Panthers squad. A lot of fun. An excellent series, an excellent season when it comes to the NHL. Can't wait to see what's up for it next. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers? Do you think they've got another run in them? What do you think it's going to take for Connor McDavid to get a cup with the Oilers? Is he going to have to leave to get a cup? I'd love to hear your thoughts to any of those questions. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the world of the NCAA. Conference realignment continues to shake its ugly head. There's some more news. The Pac-12 looking to add its final football member. Potential for Texas State. We'll talk about that, the fallout if they were to go, and much more coming up next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network. Now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, June 18th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the two championship series. We saw the Stanley Cup champions be crowned, the Florida Panthers, their second straight year raising Lord Stanley's Cup, the greatest trophy in all of sports. We also have a potential closeout game tonight about to tip off any second now between the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have a 3-2 series lead over the Indiana Pacers, looking to win both of their first ever championships in their current city's franchise for the Indiana Pacers. We're going to take a look at some stuff going around the world of college football, though, because that has continued to move. There is more conference realignment updates going on, specifically with the Pac-12, after it completely shattered down to just the Pac-2 with Wazoo and Oregon State. They look to rebuild. They have currently 8 members, 7 full members. You need 8 football members to be a full conference again. They're having some trouble bringing in that final guy. Right now, all signs seem to point towards a potential union with the Sun Belt's Texas State. And there's lots of reasons for that we'll get into in just one second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, June 18th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into everything you need to know about what's going on with this potential Texas State and Pac-12. First, in overview. Right now, the Pac-12 is sitting at 8 total members, 7 football members. The 8th member being Gonzaga is a basketball only or doesn't have a football program. The bylaws state that you need 8 football participating members to be a conference, at least for college football. You need 8 full members. Right now, they don't have that. They're looking to get one more. And the favorite seems to be Texas State. Texas State right now, a hub in Austin, one of the biggest growing cities in the United States, not only gives you a foothold in the rich state of Texas, but it also gives you a really interesting program in Texas State. Texas State right now is currently in the Sun Belt, a team in the Sun Belt West that is kind of that foothold in Texas for a Sun Belt division, a Sun Belt conference that is kind of upper middle class when it comes to conferences, right? You have your top 1% in the Big Ten and the SEC. Then you have your rich guys when you're talking about the ACC and the Big 12. Pac-12 probably, if they're a full conference, would fall next with the American and the Sun Belt doing everything it possibly can to potentially claw onto that group as opposed to the group behind it, which is going to be the CUSA and those kind of conferences now. But there is a lot to love about what this team brings. Texas State has strong football presence. You get that foothold in a state of Texas. You get a place to build your offices. Texas State is most likely going to be a team. Texas State's president made a cryptic post about beavers in a river in Austin, Texas, right? Potentially hinting at that move from the Sun Belt to the Pac-12. We talked about the rumors connecting them together. Like I said, they want that new HQ. They want a strong base of marketing. They tried to get to Las Vegas, right? It didn't work. UNLV did not go without Nevada, and they were just promised a lot more in their current conference, so they stayed put. The Pac-12, though, is still looking for that city to be their stronghold, and Austin, Texas would be a really nice market to have. Geographically, Texas State has, again, in that Sun Belt, a Sun Belt conference that is a lot more further to the east. The Appalachian regions, your Carolinas, your mountain states, your Alabamas, your Mississippis, Louisiana. They've got a couple schools over there, one in Arkansas as well. Texas State kind of felt like an outlier. It's the furthest out there when you have to travel between them and James Madison, which is the two most geographically isolated teams in this conference. But even JMU has App State pretty close to it. It has ODU pretty close to it. There's still a little bit of geographic tie. So it makes a little bit of sense if Texas State wants to leave. The buyout for Texas State, though, we're looking at $5 million right now. It does double to $10 million on July 1st. So if we're looking at a potential deal here, it most likely is going to come in the next few weeks. I know there's been some other rumors. Teams like Tulane have kind of said, no, we're out. We're not joining the Pac-12. We're staying in the American. Memphis is an interesting one. The buyout for them is $25 million. The Pac-12 said they could cover about $2.5 million. I don't know. That obviously was not enough for Memphis to bite the bullet and pay the other $23 million. But maybe for Texas State, they can say, hey, we can match, we can make the next $2.5 million if you promise to get us that $2.5 million to help with our buyout. Pac-12, once you get up to that $7.5 million, it's not going to be easy. As far as the Sun Belt's plan, if Texas State decides to leave, they're going to be looking for new members. There's two teams on the top of that list. Right now, it's between Louisiana Tech and Western Kentucky, two teams in the Conference USA right now that have been near the top for a lot of their different sports. LA Tech, Louisiana Tech just made the College World Series. That's a huge thing that's driving, obviously, Coastal Carolina is one of those big competitors, one of the Final Four, advanced to the top three today so far in the College World Series. They won one in 2016. They have been a really big baseball and softball conference is the Sun Belt. So that's kind of nice for them. You also have ULM and Louisiana in the same state as you try and build that regional rivalry. You have three teams now. You can make a little triangle of hate over there in that conference. It should be fun. Strong baseball program. The other one is Western Kentucky. We talked about the Appalachian region. They fill in with that App State, with that JMU, a little bit more to the east with that ODU. You have guys like South Alabama kind of in that area. This is what you're looking at, right? It's not necessarily the most central to the Sun Belt and their holdings, but it's not too far out. They've got a good base for a program. They have made a bowl game the last couple of years. They're a fun football team. They've got solid athletics all around. That's an interesting case in Western Kentucky. It does seem like Louisiana Tech has the quote-unquote lead when we're talking about which would happen, but it does have to see if Texas State goes first. There's been a lot of rumors. Obviously, conference realignment's gone crazy the last couple years with the Pac-12 dying and the complete shakeup of how we take a look at college football between conferences and playoff formats and everything. Everything is changing at such an incredibly fast pace. I have no idea where it takes us. I think Texas State does, at the end of the day, leave the Sun Belt for the Pac-12. It's a sexier brand name. It would give them a lot of really strong holding with the potential to be reconsidered to the Power 5. I don't know how that would go, but Texas State, at addition to that conference that has Washington State, has Oregon State, has Boise State, has Colorado State, San Diego State, lots of states over there, fits the naming region right there. I think that's a good fit for them. That's where I think they'll most likely end up, and it seems like Louisiana Tech is the name that's floated around for the Sun Belt if they are to make a move. Now, a more intriguing example, if Texas State goes, who else gets poached from the Sun Belt? We've kind of seen how it comes in waves. The Mountain West basically all joined the Pac-12. Now the Mountain West is struggling. They're going out and picking a couple guys from other conferences. As those conferences get picked clean, we're going to start to see it. If the Sun Belt starts to get picked clean, which teams are going to get saved? I think programs like App State, like JMU, are going to get saved. I think programs like Texas State, with its big market, would get saved. But a lot of those teams, I know you have the Atlanta market with Georgia State and Georgia State and Georgia Tech right there. They've got two schools right there in Atlanta. They could most likely get poached from the Sun Belt. But it's going to be really interesting to see as the conference realignment conversation continues to grow and change. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where does Texas State end up? What happens to the rest of the Sun Belt if they do get poached there? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, around the horn, some big news from baseball, from Shohei Ohtani making his mound debut for the Los Angeles Dodgers, to Davey Martinez and his comments about the Washington Nationals, as they have now lost 9 games in a row. Swept by the Marlins, on the verge of getting swept by the Rockies. Is his job safe? We'll talk about all that and more coming up next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, June 18th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over potential conference realignment with Texas State and the Pac-12. In this segment, we take a look at baseball. Around the horn, some big news with the Dodgers as well as the Washington Nationals. We'll talk about all of that in just a second, but before we do, a quick reminder, this is the final week of our podcast here. I will continue to do things over at the Triple Threat Show, but if you're looking for more GSMC sports, you can find me over at YouTube at the Triple Threat Show. I will see you over there after Monday's final show. Regardless of all of that, though, we are going to be talking here about the world of baseball. Right now, we have a couple of big stories, starting off with the biggest one, Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani made his Dodgers debut on the mound a couple of nights ago, went 1 inning, 28 pitches. He looked a little bit wild. He kept losing. He kept missing to the glove side and low. Almost hit a guy, was working some long counts, but the key with Shohei Ohtani here, his velocity was up. He hit 100.2 miles per hour on a pitch. He hit 99.8 miles per hour on a pitch. And when you have a guy coming back from Tommy John, not just one Tommy John, but his second Tommy John of his career, it is huge to see that he has that velocity there. Now, it was only for one inning. He gave up a run, 2 hits. One of those hits shouldn't have happened because he should have struck out Machado, but he gets out of that inning, and ultimately the Dodgers get a win in that game. He has 2 RBIs from behind the plate. His numbers are going to go down a little bit if he pitches, and there is a decline. There's a difference, but the decline is the difference between the MVP, the second best hitter in all of baseball behind Aaron Judge only, and being just a really good hitter, a guy that can go down as your best hitter on your team, but not necessarily going to win MVP awards. So if you're the Dodgers, you're still happy with whatever Shohei Ohtani puts out as product for you. But if he can get back on the mound, especially with the huge amount of injuries that the Dodgers have suffered, 14 injuries to their arms, split between the bullpen and the starting lineup, you get Shohei out there, it is going to work wonders for them. They needed him now. He also ran the gauntlet. He went up against Fernando Tatis his first at-bat, was able to get him to swing and miss at a couple of his stuff, which is huge. But Fernando Tatis is playing at an MVP level right now, maybe the most productive hitter in the NL behind Shohei Ohtani. Manny Machado, huge, right behind him. Xander Bogaerts, right behind him. Luis Arias, one of the best pure contact hitters in the sport, right behind him. That was not an easy lineup for him to go through and then turn around and face Dylan Cease. It wasn't an easy one, but he went out there and he had a huge game. Shohei Ohtani, if he can get back on the mound, if he can get back to what he was, which was a 3.0 ERA guy, a guy that struck out 170 people in 130 innings, over his career, he is going to be one of the greatest players in all of baseball. Now, if he doesn't get back to the mound, he's still going to be an amazing player. If he doesn't really return to form, which there's a chance he doesn't, coming back from not just 1, but 2 Tommy Johns is a lot to ask for, especially in today's game when we're seeing pitcher injuries take a huge uptick due to all of the ideas around spin and velocity over placement and finesse. But it's tough. It's tough. It really is. I think Shohei Ohtani comes back out. He'll be just fine. It's going to be a lot more of these one-inning kind of starts for him as long as he's in the lineup every day. Doesn't really matter to the Dodgers or to me because it's fun to watch. It's must-watch television. On the other side of things, a team that is not doing so well, the Washington Nationals have lost 10 games in a row. And it's not just that they've lost 10 games in a row. All month, they have struggled offensively. They were just swept by the Miami Marlins. They have lost 2 straight games to the Rockies. They are in danger of getting swept by the Rockies tonight. Right now, it is currently tied at 0 in the bottom of the second, but it's a 4-game series. They've dropped 2. They have now lost 10 games in a row. 10 games in a row. And one of the reasons I'm talking about it, because the Nationals aren't going to make noise here, it's just the fact that a quote from one Davey Martinez, the manager, the media member went out and asked, hey, the offense has been struggling. Is that on the coaches? Is that on the players? And that is a tough question to answer, right? You don't know how to answer that question, but you have to be professional. Instead, what Davey Martinez said, and I quote, it's never on the coaches. It's not coaching. It's on the players. He just called out a young team. He said it's on you. It's never on the coaching. But if you are a Nationals fan, if you pay attention, that's not necessarily the truth. CJ Abrams and James Wood both have incredible seasons. They're doing their best, but Darnell Cole's the hitting coach, one of the worst in the league. The catching coach, one of the worst in the league, as the Nats once again have the worst qualified catching core, despite Kyber Ruiz still doing a good job. Davey Martinez doesn't know how to manage a bullpen. He throws his bullpen arms until their arms fall off. It's happened again. Brad Lord, a young guy, he's pitched every single game for the last week. It's not good. It is a mess over there in Washington. And despite them winning a championship with Davey Martinez in 2019, they're in the middle of a rebuild, and they need to be able to not throw their young players under the bus, even if they are struggling a little bit. but it's not on them. The coaching needs to make a change. It's something that's needed to change for a long time with that Washington Nationals organization, and it's not going to happen. Davey Martinez, I think, needs to go. A comment from YouTube from Jackrabbit73. He says the key with Shohei is to give him a pitch limit. He can throw as hard as he wants, but he has to have a hard limit or else he'll need another Tommy John and then will be unavailable as a hitter and a pitcher again. And I think you're absolutely right with that. I think it's going to be really crucial how they manage him. He was always going to be an opener when he came out and made his debut against the Padres. There was a chance I think he could have gone through the whole lineup one time, I think was their goal, but he struggled. Again, 28 pitches, long counts. The velocity was there, which was the key I was looking for. He said he wanted to throw 96, but he got excited, which is good. You can tell that he loves the mound, but it is something that you're going to have to work up. A lot of guys, they have their rehab starts down in AA. You can't do that with Shohei because of what he does with the bat. The current favorite to win MVP as a DH now 2 years in a row because of how valuable he is as a bat. You'd never see DHs win the MVP, let alone repeat as the MVP. If he can get out there, and even if he kind of works as a bullpen arm, right? Not necessarily a starter, but an opener that can get you 2 to 3 innings, throwing 100, getting those guys out. If you keep him in the lineup after that, it takes so much pressure off of a completely dismantled and injured bullpen and starting pitching room for the Dodgers. And the other key is they don't have to call anybody up or send anybody down because he's already on the roster. It's one of the most unique situations, and I'm worried because the Dodgers, they just don't know how to keep arms healthy, right? It's not a good situation for a guy like Shohei, who they need to be very careful with. They're going to push him as much as Shohei wants to be pushed while being as safe as they can. I don't know how it's going to go, but you're right, Jackrabbit. They absolutely do need to work on a pitch limit. I don't know what that number will be. They said he threw 45 pitches in simulated games. He got 28 in the real game, and obviously real game is a lot different than when you're throwing against a computer. And if you miss, it's not a big deal. He needs to work on his command a little bit, but that'll come. He's still working. He's still an MVP candidate. And as long as it doesn't take away from what he can do at the plate, Shohei Ohtani making his debut as a pitcher for the Dodgers is just a positive thing. But you do have to be very careful with what you do with him so that if he gets another arm injury, if he hurts himself pitching again, he never steps foot on that mound again. This really is his last chance. We've seen guys, I think Steven Strasburg is the one that pops into my mind. He had 2 Tommy John surgeries. He was able to lead the Nationals to that World Series in 2019, winning World Series MVP for what he did, his heroics over there. But he can't even do normal activities right now. His arm is completely destroyed. You need to be very careful. And again, that's a little bit on Davey Martinez. He doesn't know how to use the bullpen. He rode those starters for the entire run because they didn't have a bullpen. It is just a mess. Jackrabbit also says because they need pitching. They need a better, healthier, stronger arm because all 3 heads of Japanese pitching dragon were hurt as of a week ago. Yeah, and it's not just that, right? They've got 14 pitchers on the IL, right? They've got 8 from the bullpen, 6 from the starter. Roki Sasaki is shut down for the rest of the season. He's been dealing with an injury ever since the World Baseball Classic, really. His velocity's been kind of down. Yamamoto, who started off super hot, dealing with an injury. You still have Blake Snell dealing with an injury. Clayton Kershaw dealing with an injury. You still have a lot more guys in that bullpen dealing with injuries. It is a mess, which is why they need Shohei. But they also need to be careful because if he signed that $700 million contract with them with the expectation that he is going to be a starting pitcher and a hitter, right? That's why they gave him that record-breaking amount of money. If he can't pitch again, if he gets one more injury, he's never pitching again. So they need to be very smart. They need to be very cautious with how they roll back in Shohei Ohtani. There is a right way to do this. And because they don't have that rehab startability, it is going to be very, very tough. But you can't mismanage a $700 million asset and really survive as a coach, as a front office. despite how good this team is, if he goes down again, if they're not being the most careful they possibly can be, that is a fireable offense. You cannot rush the guy that's going to be the cornerstone or is supposed to be the cornerstone of your franchise for the next 10 seasons to the mound if he's not ready. And that's just going to take some patience. It's going to take knowing when their body is ready. It's going to be a really tough medical situation to navigate, but if they do it well, everything should be just fine for the Dodgers. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. How much longer do you think it takes for Shohei Ohtani to be back on the mound full-time as a starter? I don't think he gets on until after the All-Star break at a minimum. I don't even think he really gets on as a full-time starting pitcher until the playoffs, really, maybe even later than that, maybe even next season. But do they fire Davey do the Nationals fire Davey Martinez? So many other questions. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, sad news. This is the last week of our podcast. I will still be going live every single day, same time, different place at the Triple Threat Show, so you can find me over there on YouTube. Find stuff from college radio days 4 years ago. If you want to see me at my worst, go check that out. But we'll be there live starting next week. I'll see you here tomorrow to go over a potential closeout game in the NBA Finals and much more. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go